Position the replacement fuel pump on the engine block. If resistance is felt when positioning the pump, don't force it or pull it in with the mounting bolts. Crank the engine to turn the fuel pump eccentric or camshaft until the resistance fades. Now you can install the mounting bolts and torque them to the correct specifications. Consult a manual such as a Haynes manual for the recommended torque value on your specific vehicle. To ensure proper performance from your new pump, we recommend replacing any rubber fuel lines and hose clamps. Next, connect the fuel lines to the replacement pump. Start all fittings by hand to prevent cross-threading. Use a backup wrench on pump fittings to prevent damage to the pump, and tighten all metal lines using flare nut wrenches. Start the engine and check all the lines and area around the pump for leaks, and you're done.
Now let's quickly recap the steps for replacing a mechanical fuel pump. Locate the fuel pump and position a drain pan underneath it to catch any excess fuel that may leak from the lines or the pump itself. Disconnect and cap the fuel lines from the pump. Large vacuum caps work well for this. Remove the fuel pump mounting bolts. Remove the old pump from the engine and compare the new and old pumps to be sure of the correct replacement. If a fuel pump push rod is used, coat the push rod with a thick coat of grease to hold it in place during the installation. Apply a light coat of sealer to the gasket and position it on the pump. Place the mounting bolts through the pump and position it up to the mounting surface on the engine block. If resistance is felt when positioning the pump, don't force it into position with the bolts. Crank the engine to reposition the camshaft or fuel pump eccentric and reinstall the pump. Inspect and replace any rubber fuel lines and hose clamps that appear old or deteriorated. When reconnecting any steel lines to the pump, be sure to use a backup wrench on the pump fitting to prevent damage during tightening. Start the engine and check around all lines and fittings for leaks.
To diagnose a defective in-tank electric fuel pump, the tools you will need include a circuit tester, a fuel pressure test kit, a set of jack stands, a floor jack, and a service manual such as a Haynes manual for your particular vehicle. There are two conditions that indicate a possible defective electric fuel pump. The first condition is no fuel getting to the engine. The second condition is a drop in performance, engine won't idle, or starts and stalls. Gasoline is extremely flammable, so extra precautions must be taken when working on any fuel system component. Do not smoke. Allow open flames or bare light bulbs in or near the work area, and be sure of proper ventilation where you are working. Before beginning any fuel pump tests, first be sure the vehicle has enough gas and is parked on a level surface. Many vehicles, when low on fuel and parked on a slope, will not start due to fuel starvation. First, remove the gas cap. Have an assistant turn the key to on while you listen for the sound of the in-tank fuel pump through the filler neck. The pump should make a steady whirring sound for at least 2 seconds. If no sound is heard, check the fuses. Most vehicles will have a fuel pump fuse located in the fuse block. If the fuse is bad, replace it. Many Ford vehicles are equipped with an inertia switch. Locate the switch and verify the reset button is not tripped. If tripped, reset the button and test start the vehicle. If the vehicle will not start, check the switch for continuity. Using a self-powered test light or continuity tester, back probe the 2 wires and check for continuity. If no current can go through the switch, replace it. Next, check for power going to the fuel pump. For easier access to the fuel pump's electrical connector, raise the rear end of the vehicle and support it securely on jack stands. For demonstration purposes, our vehicle will be on a hoist. Locate the wire harness to the fuel pump and unplug the connector from the tank. On some vehicles, you may have to partially drop the fuel tank to gain access to the connector. Using a test light, verify that there's voltage at the fuel pump connector for 2 seconds after an assistant turns the key to on. Also check for voltage with the key in the start position. If there's voltage at the pump connector, but the pump does not operate, replace the fuel pump. If there is no voltage at the connector during this test, check the fuel pump relay. It will be located in the engine compartment, either on the firewall or fender. Once located, use a test light and check for power to the relay with the key turned to the on position and to the start position. If power is present, check the wiring between the relay and pump. If okay, replace the relay. If no power is present, or if the vehicle is not equipped with a relay, refer to a service manual for further test procedures. The second condition involves a fuel pump that works, but has low fuel pressure. To check for low pressure, you will need a fuel pressure test kit. Before inserting the gauge from the kit into the fuel line, the residual fuel pressure must be relieved. There are several different methods for doing this. On many vehicles, you can simply disconnect the wires leading to the fuel pump near the fuel tank. Or, remove the fuse for the electrical fuel pump. Start the engine and allow it to run until it dies. This will remove residual pressure. Many Ford vehicles are equipped with an item called an inertia switch, which you can tap with the handle of a screwdriver to disarm the fuel pump. Once again, you must start the engine and allow it to run until it dies to relieve the pressure. Check a service manual, such as a Haynes, for the specific location of the inertia switch on your vehicle. Another method on many vehicles is to locate the fuel system pressure regulator. Disconnect the vacuum hose leading to it and connect a hand vacuum pump in its place. Apply 25 inches of vacuum to the regulator and it will relieve the system pressure through the return line of the gas tank. Certain other vehicles with BOSCH type fuel injection will require you to remove the gas cap, disconnect the electrical connector from an injector nozzle, ground one terminal of the nozzle with a jumper lead, and with another jumper lead, run battery power to the other terminal of the injector nozzle. Touch the terminal several times to relieve system pressure. Do not, however, hold the positive lead onto the nozzle for more than 2 seconds at a time, as damage to the windings inside the nozzle could result. After fuel system pressure has been relieved on your vehicle, disconnect the negative battery cable before working on the fuel system. For vehicles not shown, refer to a service manual such as a Haynes to find the proper procedure for relieving fuel pressure. Once fuel pressure has been relieved, connect the fuel pressure gauge in the fuel line next to the tank. Raise and support the vehicle's rear end with jack stands to gain access to the fuel line. Once installed, reconnect any electrical connections removed earlier, reinstall the fuel pump fuse if removed, or reset the inertia switch on Ford vehicles. Turn the ignition switch to the run position and note the fuel pressure reading on the gauge. Compare the reading to the fuel pressure specification for that vehicle. This will be found in a service manual, such as a Haynes. If fuel pressure is lower than specifications, check the fuel pump and filter sock and replace as needed. If fuel pressure meets specifications, install the fuel pressure gauge in the fuel line between the fuel filter and injectors and retest. If the pressure is lower than specifications, replace the fuel filter. If the pressure meets specifications, refer to a service manual for further diagnosis and testing.
Let's briefly recap the steps for testing an in-tank electric fuel pump. Remove the gas cap and listen for a steady whirring sound to come from the fuel pump when the ignition switch is turned to the run position. No sound from the pump could be caused by a blown fuse, faulty relay, a tripped inertia switch, or a failing fuel pump. Next, check for power at the electrical connection near the pump. If no power is being delivered to the pump, trace the wiring to locate and identify the source of the problem. If power is being supplied to the pump, but the pump is not running, replace the pump. If the vehicle starts then dies, it could be due to a pump with low pressure. To perform a pressure test on a fuel-injected vehicle, you must first remove the residual pressure from the system. Disconnect the fuel supply line back near the pump, and in its place connect a high-pressure feed